Hey, so in this video, we are going to discuss how you can make a jump in your career and you can switch your career into pure IT. In this video, I have discussed what are the steps you're supposed to take, what you're not supposed to do, and what are the things you're supposed to do. And obviously, there will be confusion because this is not something which you can decide in a single day. So if you have confusion, if you have questions, obviously you can put down in the comment, or we have a very good link in the description where you can actually talk to one of our counselors who can discuss and who can tell you what you're supposed to do. And at the last of the video, at the end of the video, we have a bonus tips. With those bonus tips, you can actually make a very good jump into career. So let's begin. Okay, now let's discuss why you want to switch your career. Well, these are the few reasons. In case if you have some other reasons, please put down in the comment. Maybe you're not satisfied with your salary, not finding proper career growth, too much work pressure, job is not stable, or like me, you want to work from home. Because obviously when you have an opportunity to work from home, like from last 2 years, we are seeing that. Like, I'm a big fan of work from home because I could see that I could spend time with my family. I could spend time on my health. I could eat what I want. I don't have to drag myself. So that is why I preferred work from home. And that may be the reason because you want to switch to pure IT, because IT does not have this facility of working from home, but it has an opportunity that you can work from home also. Okay, now let's discuss what will be the steps. If you're watching this video, obviously you are wondering what are the steps, Avinash, I have to take if I want to jump into IT. Well, these are the steps which I feel, and I have researched that these are the correct steps which you have to take to actually make the switch. What are these steps? Well, first of all, obviously you have to find your why. Why do you want to switch to IT? Secondly, you have to decide your timeline. The next step would be assess your skills. Well, I don't recommend that if you don't have these kind of skills, obviously we will discuss what kind of skills are required if you want to jump into IT. But if you don't possess those skills, if you cannot learn those skills, I would say that you should not jump the ship. Then you have to choose a field. Obviously, IT is a huge field. You have to understand, you cannot go everywhere. You have to decide where you want to go. Then you have to learn the concepts of programming. Now, obviously you can say, Avinash, everyone says that if I want to go to IT, you should learn programming. Well, I would say it is not important, but I recommend that. Then you have to earn the certification. What is the reason, Avinash, I have to earn the certification? We will discuss in that particular step. And finally, make the switch. Once you have completed all these 6 steps, in 7th step, you can make the switch and you can make your career into pure IT. Okay, now let's discuss one of the negative factors why you should not jump. Well, if you are not fully committed, if you feel like you cannot spend this amount of time, if you cannot learn new skills, if you don't have the time, if you want to enjoy your weekends, if you want to enjoy maybe late night shows, in that case, this video is not for you. Secondly, if you are not hardworking, obviously everyone says that I'm a hard worker and I will work hard, but obviously there is a big difference between a person who is a hardworking person and a person who says that I'm a hardworking person. And finally, if you're not willing to learn, IT is not something which you can just click and you are into IT. It is a skill set, it is a set of skills which you have to possess to actually step into that career path. And obviously, if you are not willing to learn new things, in that case, this video is obviously not for you. And obviously, in that case, you should not jump into this field of IT because it is going to ask you to learn things constantly every single day. Okay, now you can think about it like, Avinash, why you were discussing those points. I just want to give you an example. You can see Yes Bank crisis, PhonePe comes up to a halt, but staff keeps it up and running. So this was a scenario when PhonePe was down. Why? Because there was a clash or maybe like some instance which happened with Yes Bank. And if you're going to read this article, which is provided by Business Standard, you will realize that the founder and the company were working 24 hours just to make sure that PhonePe was up and running. I want to give a second example. This is the founder of Zomato, and you can see this is 5 p.m. on 31st of 2021. He is committed with his team to make sure that the Zomato app was up and running. Now, this is the level of commitment which is required in IT for a very specific reason. If you have some pros in the field, you will definitely have some cons in that field as well. Okay, the number one step if you want to switch to IT is find your why. Now, Avinash, why you are giving a motivation sort of a thing? Well, I'm not giving you any motivation. I'm talking about a reality. If you don't have a why, you won't be able to switch to IT, or maybe you won't be able to do anything. You can read a quote, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. He's simply trying to say is that if you have a very good reason behind something you want to do, you can actually achieve it. I'm not saying that yes, you will achieve it. Obviously, there are so many permutation and combination happen, but if you don't have this thing with you, if you don't have a why with you, I can guarantee you won't be able to switch to IT. So first of all, first thing first, write down why do you want to switch to IT? Because without that, you won't be able to do that. And please don't make it very generic one. It should be a very proper why, that why you want to do. And obviously, if you have a very good why reason, please put that in the comment. Let me see what kind of a reason because of which you want to switch to IT. Okay, now I have found my why. Now you have to set the timeline. Why? Because when you don't have a timeline with you, it will be impossible for you to switch your career. Your life is limited. Obviously, I don't know what is your age, but yes, your time is limited and you cannot extend it. So you have to have a timeline in your mind. Okay, by when you want to jump ship. You cannot say, okay, Avinash, I'll wake up and I will make the career switch. It cannot happen like that. So you need to have a timeline by when you are planning to make a switch. Learning hours in a day is like how many hours you want to spend in a single day so that you want to make a switch, because without that, you won't be able to make the switch. So please make sure that you have a proper timeline. An ideal timeline, I would say it should be 2 years. You should be spending around 20 hours in a week to actually upskill yourself, and like giving 20 hours in a week for next 2 years, you will be able to make the switch. Okay, so the next point is assessing your skills. Are you even for IT? Can you even be part of an IT? Because as I said, IT has the pros and IT also has the cons. Well, are you a people person? Because obviously IT does not mean that you don't have to interact with people. You have to interact with people. You have to coordinate with your co-workers. You have to coordinate with your team leader. You have to coordinate with your juniors. So again, that is a field where you have to be a people person. Obviously, you don't have to meet the customers, but yes, obviously you have to have some people making skills. Secondly, can you sit in front of a computer sometimes 16 hours a day? Well, this is not a skill. This is just a sitting skill, but can you do that? Because obviously sometimes in IT, you need to do that. And if you can do that, that means that you are consistent, you have the consistency, and with this skill, you can actually make a good career in IT. Then, do you have a logical reasoning? This is going to be very important, because if I talk about IT works on pure processes and logics. If you don't have those, you won't be able to make a career in it. And finally, do you have analytical thinking? If you want to do something, what will be the analysis of it? What will be the positives of it? What will be the negative effects of it? Can you calculate in your mind before even implementing that? These set of skills are very important if you want to make a career in IT and also grow your career in IT, because you can make a career in IT and you can get out of that field. But if you want to grow your career, in that case, these skills are very important. Okay, now comes the part of choosing our field. I have the timeline, I have my why, I have assessed my skills. Now what to do? Where should I go? And obviously there are so many fields we have with IT, but I have written the most important one, I should say, which have a very good career coming down the line, or maybe they are just booming up. Well, what are those? Well, they are obviously software development, artificial intelligence, which is obviously growing a lot. Blockchain, I don't think if you're watching this video, you have not heard about this thing which is known as blockchain. Cloud computing, obviously you're watching this video on YouTube, probably from your mobile phone. It is served from cloud, and how to manage that thing is a concept of cloud computing. Well, big data. So many companies, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, they have a huge amount of data. What to do with that data? You can obviously become a big data expert. Internet of Things, obviously, I don't think we need an introduction to that. And finally, you can also go to game development, where you can make mobile games, desktop games, web games, and you can make a good career in that field. Now, obviously, Avinash, you have confused me. What is right for me? Now, obviously, this is a very broad question. I cannot give a simple answer to that. Why? Because obviously, if I talk about if I'm a doctor, I have to understand what is your body profile so that I can give you right medicine. Well, in that case, I would suggest if you have this sort of a confusing question, we have a form link down below. You can just click on that link, fill in your details, and someone from our team will actually reach you and assist you what would be the right option for you. Okay, now I would say this is a recommended step. And it is not an important step. Obviously, a lot of people can debate on it, but I don't want to go to debate. I want to go for a recommendation, what I feel is right. If we talk about learning programming, it is a skill. Let's say if you're going to work in Tamil Nadu, it is better to learn that language of Tamil instead of going and speaking your own language, because you will be able to communicate with the people of Tamil quite easily. In same scenario, if you're making a jump to IT, it is better that you learn their language. And obviously they don't speak any language, they actually write the languages. So any programming language is better. Now, why you should do that? So you can think like an IT expert. How am I thinking? How am I supposed to think? If you're learning a programming language, you will be able to think like an expert. I'm not saying that it is going to make you an expert, but yes, you can think like an expert. Then you are familiar with the terminology. A lot of things, IT has so many terms, and obviously it will be a lot confusing for you when you are going to jump into it, because obviously for you, those are English terms, but in IT, they have a whole new meaning. So if you're going to learn the programming language, you will be able to have some terminologies under your belt. And finally, you can become familiar with the workflow, because obviously if you're going to somewhere and if you're not aware how the workflow works, in that case obviously it is going to get difficult. So it is better that you learn a programming language. Now again, I want to repeat this. If you want to switch your career into IT, many people will say it is not important to learn a programming language, which I would agree, but I would recommend so that you can actually take a good advantage when you're making the switch. Now, obviously, if you are learning a programming language, there are questions, Avinash, what should I learn? What is the language I should be learning? So here are a few examples I have included. I have included Python, Ruby is one example, Java is one example, and obviously Go language, which is created by Google, is also a good example. So these are the few programming languages, if I may. You can start, you don't have to become an expert, you just have to be a beginner. You have to learn the concepts of programming, not a programming language, which is going to be a game changer for you. Okay, now you have found your why, you have a timeline with you, you're learning a programming language, you have assessed your skill. Now what should I do? Well, obviously the next very valid step is earning certificates. Now, first of all, let's try to understand why we need a certificate. Well, what happens when you're making a switch? Now you have spent 2 years of your life learning the terminology, or maybe learning or maybe getting into the field of IT. Now, when you're going to apply, obviously the company is going to ask, hey, Avinash, do you have a relevant experience? And if answer is no, obviously the company will say, okay, we are looking for a better candidate. Now, the problem here is you're committed that you want to switch your career into IT, but obviously since you don't have a relevant work experience, what you should do? Well, in that case, you should earn the certificates. Why? Because with these certificates, you can actually show that you have an experience. And obviously, if those certificates have some validity, like we have certificates from AWS, we have certificates from Microsoft, we have certificates from different vendors which have a very good reputation. In those cases, those certificates are going to be game changer for you. And obviously, if your question is why should I get a certificate? So first of all, I would suggest that get a certificate from your relevant field. Don't get a certificate from a field which is irrelevant for you. Secondly, obviously, it is good when you have a non-IT background. If a person has the IT background, obviously they can say, okay, I don't have a certificate, I have some experience, so this word works. But obviously, if you're coming from non-IT, if you don't have certification, in that case, it is going to be a very tough ride for you. Then it is easy to make a switch because obviously those certificates show that you have some relevant skills which are required. And finally, most important point, earn the right certificate, not just the certificate. There are so many certificates which are technically useless. If you're going to show it to the HR, they're going to say, okay, Avinash, your profile looks good, but obviously back in their mind, they will say, Avinash does not have that relevant skill and I don't think he's the right person for us. Okay, Avinash, now you have mentioned all the 6 steps. What is the 7th one? 7th one is making the switch. First of all, get a professional resume. If you don't have a professional resume, obviously that is going to get difficult for you. Then Network, network, and network. This is very important for a very specific reason. If you don't know people, if they don't know you, why they are going to hire you? Then be confident. Obviously, this is a very, I would say, a very common term, I would say, because obviously if you're making a jump, if you're making a switch, in that case, this gets difficult if you're not confident. And finally, become part of relevant events and webinar, because they are a very good opportunity for you to make a network and showcase that you're coming from this field. Now you're jumping into this field. You're actually ready for this field and you're excited about this field. Okay, now I have some bonus tips for you. Well, first of all, document your journey. Obviously, if you're making a switch, if you're coming from X background and now you're moving into IT, it is better that you document your journey, because obviously you can show it to your HR that yes, you are working rigorously. You can show something relevant, that why you are working here and why you have made the switch. And this is the learning progress which you have, which is going to be a very big advantage for you. Secondly, you should update your GitHub profile. Obviously, a lot of recruiters look into your GitHub profile and they analyze that if you are a consistent person, do you have this kind of skills which we need? Then start freelancing for work experience. Obviously, I mentioned this in the 6th step that you were supposed to earn these certificates. If you have some freelancing experience, you can show that you have relevant skill, you have relevant work experience, and your client testimonial are going to play a very big role for you to make a switch. And finally, one important aspect, when you're thinking of switching your career in IT, a lot of people get confused. That should I go there? Should I go there? Should I go there? This has a very good earning potential. This has this kind of field. This has this kind of advantage. This is not going to work. You have to focus on one area and one area only, because if you're going to go for multiple areas, this is going to only mess up your IT journey.